Hello friends, welcome back with another video. And yes, we are back. It's been like 5 days since I've posted the video. I'm very sorry. My schedule is pretty bad lately, but I promise you, in this December, my schedule will be okay. I might post a video not really every single day, maybe a day after, I don't know. But today we're back to in the Armchair Historian channel, and we're reacting to what was World War I like in Africa and had animated history. And this was the video that I was talking about, what was World War I like in Africa. And I've mentioned this video for like the last, or maybe like 2 months ago or 4 months ago. It's been a while, and we're now diving deep because last video we reacted to German East Africa, made by the Great War channel by Indy Nidell. So here we're reacting to what was World War I like in Africa. I know that I want to learn more about World War I, and I'm very sorry. Next video might actually be about the Pacific War, because it's been a while since I've made the video about the Pacific War. So yeah guys, like and subscribe for more videos like this. I'm very excited. Let's go.
Hi, I'm Griffin Johnson, the Armchair Historian. With the British, French, and German empires all having extensive colonies in Africa during the First World War, it should come as no surprise that there was extensive fighting there. Although soldiers deployed in the African theater weren't subject to the same gruesome frontal charges and long months of trench warfare found in Europe, the soldiers fighting in Africa had their own set of problems to contend with.
This war was actually called the Movement War because they kept on moving, they kept on withdrawing, moving by using guerrilla warfare. And because they can't just drag artillery in African terrain, so that does make sense. It's called the Movement War, or maybe the Foot War by the Great War channel.
Hostile terrain, lack of infrastructure, and a constant shortage of supplies made combat there uniquely prolonged, miserable, and deadly.
Yeah.
This video was sponsored by Bespoke Post, a subscription club.
Okay, so we're gonna speak. I'm sorry. We're going to skip this ad. I'm very sorry. Let's go.
With the link in the description below.
Okay.
When the Great War broke out in the summer of 1914, the governing leaders of colonial Africa received the news with considerably less enthusiasm than their countrymen back home. While the territories claimed by Europe's imperial powers appeared vast and menacing, much of the land was only held in name, with many native Africans living in small, remote communities still answering to their local kings and chiefs. Thus, many colonial governors feared that being drawn into a global conflict would weaken or break their already tenuous hold over the continent. At the beginning of the war, many administrators and journalists in Africa declared that the colonies should remain neutral and continue to cooperate with each other to consolidate their power in the region. This commitment to neutrality was very powerful, managing to last a whole 1 week before France and Britain ordered their colonial armies to start invading German colonies. The first shots were fired by the French invading German Cameroon on August 6th. The next day, Allied forces invaded Togoland, and German forces in East Africa began raiding nearby colonies. While Togoland would surrender in only 3 weeks with minimal resistance, the defenders of Cameroon put up a stubborn fight. Though British and French forces were able to quickly occupy much of the colony, the mountainous terrain of central Cameroon proved highly defensible, letting the Germans hold back the Allied forces for more than a year, repelling assault after assault on the provisional capital of Yaoundé.
There was a tree that was signed by the the imperialists, I might just call them imperialists, the British, the French, the Belgians, and the Germans. I forgot what you call them. The the Congolese Treaty. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's a treaty where the colonies will stay neutral in this war. But I thought the Germans were the ones that broke the treaty. Okay. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm gonna search it up if the Germans were the one that broke this treaty, or the British, and the French, or maybe the Belgians. We'll see. Later on. We're just gonna search it up.
Meanwhile, in response to German raids, the British began to prepare an amphibious invasion of German East Africa, beginning with the capture of the port of Tonga in November. Tonga was sparsely defended, and so the Allies expected an easy victory. But their efforts would be complicated by fierce enemy resistance, and of all things, bees. More on that later. Not long after the fighting broke out in the northwest, the British Union of South Africa mobilized its forces for what should have been a quick and easy invasion of German Southwest Africa. The South African army outnumbered the German garrison 20-1. And on September 14th, they invaded and rapidly began to occupy the German colony. However, the British rulers of South Africa soon found their efforts complicated, as always, by the Boers. Descendants of Dutch settlers in the region, the Boers had long resented British rule in the region, and tensions between the two groups were high. On the day after the invasion
the Boers had been independent of South Africa for decades until 1902, when they were forcefully annexed by the British after the brutal Second Boer War. Oh, Second Boer War? There was a Boer War? Boer or Boer? I have to learn about that. That's interesting.
Began, a Boer politician and former general of the Second Boer War, Quos de la Rey, was unlawfully shot dead by a British policeman at a roadblock. In response, one of the commanding officers leading the invasion of Southwest Africa, Lieutenant Colonel Mani Maritz, defected, leading the soldiers under his command in a rebellion against the British South African government. The rebellion threw the South African army into disarray, and command was turned over to General Jan Smuts, a seasoned British officer, in hopes that he could restore order.
That King George?
Smuts declared martial law in South Africa and halted the invasion order to deal with the rebellion.
God.
The process of putting down the uprising and rounding up Boer rebels kept Smuts occupied for the rest of 1914, giving the small German garrison precious time to regroup.
Okay, I'm just going to mute this ad because maybe they're using any copyright music on.
Meanwhile, north of the Sahara, all territory seemed to be held firmly in the hands of the Entente and neutral Italians. But the absence of German colonies did not protect North Africa from the influence of the Great War. The diversion of troops to the Western Front left European colonies in North Africa vulnerable to rebellions, which the German and Ottoman empires were more than happy to aid. In the French protectorate of Morocco, fighting was already ongoing between colonial forces and the Zayan Confederation, an alliance of Berber tribes that opposed French attempts to consolidate power in the Middle Atlas Mountains. Most of the troops in Morocco had been recalled to defend France, and so the remaining forces there had to be stretched dangerously thin across the French line to hide this sudden vulnerability.
Wow, first of all, I'm just going to flip this over. Wow, I didn't know there's a lot of rebellions that was happening in Africa. That does make sense, because knowing that the country that annexed you or forcefully invaded you is very busy with a massive war. It's your chance to rebel, to try to get your independence. And because it's not really a good idea to rebel if if the country that annexed you isn't busy, isn't doing anything, and is just improving, because you know you folks can easily get suppressed. But if the country that annexed you forcefully and just I call imperialists, God, I'm very, very sorry. It's been a while since I've learned about history. The imperialists are very busy with this massive war. It's a right opportunity to. It's a huge opportunity for you to rebel. You know. Okay.
While one hot-headed officer nearly doomed the French defense.
This was the Battle of El Harry, where over 600 French soldiers under Lieutenant Colonel René Laverdure was surrounded and killed following a raid on a seemingly vulnerable Zayan camp. Oh.
By marching off and getting his force annihilated in November, the Zayans never committed to an organized offensive, and the fragile French line managed to hold on for the rest of the war.
Okay.
Nearing the end of 1914, the British launched their invasion of German East Africa. Their first target was the port city of Tonga. On paper, capturing the city should have been easy. The British brought 4,000 men to battle, compared to the German garrison of only 250 conscripts. However, the British blundered at nearly every stage of the battle. First, Commander Arthur Aiken made the chivalrous decision to announce himself to the Germans and give them an hour to surrender the city before even landing his troops, giving German General Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck.
There we go, Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. That's the dumb idea, you know, leaving, telling them you have 1 hour to surrender and leaving them for 3 hours later. Yeah, and for a person like Paul, General or Commander Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck, no, that was dumb. That was a stupid move. Okay.
Vorbeck plenty of time to rush to Tonga with 750 reinforcements. Perhaps hoping to make up for lost time, Aiken ordered his troops to attack as soon as they hit the shore, despite their exhaustion after the long journey all the way from India. While the British seemingly did everything in their power to lose their own battle, the Germans also helped, taking the attackers by surprise with their well-concealed and fortified defensive positions. Additionally, Mother Nature contributed to the British defeat, sending swarms of agitated bees into the fighting. Even after 5,000 additional troops arrived to reinforce the flagging assault, the men were continually plagued by poor morale. And after suffering nearly 1,000 casualties, they were forced to retreat from Tonga. The Germans barely suffered 100 casualties and were able to loot plenty of medical supplies, equipment, and Maxim guns from their defeated foes, effectively supplying them for the rest of the campaign. Tonga was later described by historian Charles Hordern as one of the most notable failures in British military history, and it effectively halted the invasion of
why do you have to give them an hour, or why do you folks need to give them time to surrender? Just, if you're there, go land your troops and attack. So, because knowing that there's few defenders that could defend the city or town, city, I don't know. You could probably take Tonga pretty easily, but no, you gave them time, and knowing that it's Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck, yeah.
East Africa for the following year. As 1915 began, fighting continued to rage in Kamerun, and French troops continued to unsuccessfully besiege the capital, while British forces were bogged down in the north by the stubborn resistance of two German strongholds known as Mora and Garoua. These old-fashioned stone fortresses, long since rendered obsolete in Europe, were still extremely effective in the underdeveloped landscape of Cameroon, where heavy artillery was unavailable.
Oh wait, okay. So in the Great War channel, we saw the real photo of this, like the real photo. This is animated, drawn, but in the Great War channel, we saw the real photo. It looks cool.
Down in southwest Africa, the tiny German garrison took advantage of the chaos caused by the Maurits rebellion to turn the tables on the South African army.
Uno reverse.
They routed the small occupying garrison and reclaimed their captured territory, and in February, a small German force invaded South Africa and attempted to gain control of 2 fords at the Orange River.
Oh,
this daring German attack,
known as the Battle of Kakamas, took place on February 4th. The Maurits rebellion came to end on the very same day. Oh.
Was repelled, and 1 week later the South Africans resumed their invasion. With the full attention of the massive South African army, at last, the Germans were forced into a rapid retreat and surrendered on July 9th. In November, the British Protectorate of Egypt was taken by surprise when the Senussi Order, a secretive religious order based in Libya, invaded with 10,000 men and modern weapons provided by the Ottoman Empire. The Senussis quickly gained ground in Egypt and attempted to rally the local.
The Ottomans also offered their support to the dervishes in Somaliland, who had been fighting with the British and Italians since 19,000s. Oh, okay.
Muslim population to join them against the British. Unfortunately for the would-be holy warriors, local support failed to materialize, and the British soon began pushing back the invasion.
Mute this one. It's an ad again. Nutella. Okay. Okay. Let's continue.
Skirmishes along the border would continue for years, but the bulk of the Senussi army was decisively defeated at the Battle of Agaisia. Around the same time, the staunch German resistance in Kamerun was finally starting to collapse, and British and French forces were closing in on the capital. Seeing the writing on the wall, German commander Karl Zimmermann ordered all German soldiers and civilians to abandon Cameroon and retreat to the neighboring Spanish colony of Rio Muni. Zimmermann's retreat functionally ended the campaign, at which time Britain and France agreed on terms to divide up Cameroon amongst themselves. After the conclusion of this campaign, the British turned their attention to East Africa and its now infamous commander, Paul von Lettow-Vorbeck. In January 1916, General Jan Smuts was reassigned from the south and given an army of 20,000 men to finally conquer German East Africa. This was a massive force.
After his success defense of Tonga, the British regarded Vorbeck as a serious threat. His actions in the East Africa campaign would eventually earn him the nickname Lion of Africa. Yeah, we learned about him. We have a video about him. We reacted to it. It was made by the Great War channel. Check it out. Check it out in the description down below. Maybe it'll add the link. And yeah, Paul Lettow-Vorbeck, for me, great general. He was great. He revolutionized guerrilla warfare, and that nickname of his, Lion of Africa, yes, he deserves it.
The African theater, requiring hundreds.
Still, there's a lot. He still committed a lot of atrocities. Not him, but his soldiers did.
Hundreds of thousands of African porters to carry weapons, ammunition, and other vital supplies through the harsh landscape of East Africa. The British Army then launched their second invasion of German East Africa in February, joined by a Belgian force coming from the Congo in the west. Much like in Cameroon and Togoland, the Germans quickly lost ground against the more numerous invaders, but Lettow-Vorbeck was determined to make the Allies pay dearly for every mile. Using the thick brush and forests as cover, he launched repeated hit-and-run ambushes against the British as he withdrew, slowly whittling down their forces. These raids were successful in harassing the Allied armies.
One unit, the 9th South African Infantry, was reduced from its initial strength of 1,135 men to just 116 by October, without ever seeing combat. Wow. Okay.
And slowing them down, giving tropical diseases all the more time to wreak havoc on the Commonwealth forces.
Yeah, because not all casualties in war is from combat and from battle. There are other factors too. Disease, yeah, mostly are disease, bad hygiene, a lot. So it's not it's not all of them are what should call those again, in battle deaths. Those some casualties are from disease.
The invasion dragged on this way for the rest of 1916, with attrition devastating the British force as they slowly trudged further and further into East Africa. Rather than abandon this costly campaign, the British chose to make up their losses with more and more African conscripts. By the beginning of 1917, more than half of the British Army in East Africa consisted of local African troops, forcibly recruited from across the continent to shore up the faltering offensive. As for lettow-vorbeck, he continued his fighting retreat all the way through 1917, consistently avoiding British attempts to encircle his dwindling army. By November, the Germans had been pushed all the way back to the Rovuma River, the southern border of the colony, and were low on supplies and ammunition. Rather than surrender, lettow-vorbeck chose to cross the river and invade the poorly defended Portuguese colony of Mozambique. While the Allies were able to fully occupy German East Africa, the German army continued to make a nuisance of itself in the Portuguese colony for 9 months, raiding and pillaging it for supplies. In August 1918, they finally returned to their colony and began to retake lost territory from the pitifully small British garrisons now defending it. This fighting continued until November, when lettow-vorbeck finally surrendered upon hearing word that an armistice had been signed and the German Empire had lost the war. All told, the war in Africa claimed the lives of far fewer soldiers than it did in Europe. The Allies suffered around 42,000 military casualties, while the Germans suffered around 21,000. The civilian cost was much, much higher. It's estimated that over 1 million Africans were conscripted as porters to support the campaign, and more than 100,000 died. This caused severe depopulation of many regions. For example, 45,000 porters were recruited from Kenya, amounting to 13% of the male population. Combined with the constant raiding and requisitioning, a polite word for raiding, of local crops and cattle by both sides, the European campaigns led to a massive famine in East Africa in 1917, which claimed another 300,000 civilian lives. As is so often the case, the price of war in Africa was paid most heavily by the civilians. Germany's colonies in the region were seized and divided up between Britain and France along arbitrary lines. Even so, the First World War was the first...
Okay, so let's end it there. He's very close on ending the video, but thank goodness the video kept on continuing even though the lights stopped, and right now we have a blackout, thank goodness. But hey, hello hello everybody. So yeah guys, thank you for watching. Thank goodness we finished this video. I hope this video doesn't get corrupted. I hope not. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. I'll see you next video. Bye bye.